Still on the border reopening, well, while the announcement came as good news for many businesses, some are not happy about that. Some agricultural sector practitioners, especially large-scale farmers in the rice, maize, corn, cassava, sorghum, millet, say it is a bad omen. Let's find out why from the founder and chief executive officer of Agric Business Services, Mr. Ibikunle Onosanya. Thank you very much, Mr. Onosanya, for joining us on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, some people are excited about the border reopening, but you are not. Why?
Not at all. Now, no, like I said at an earlier program, there's no agriculturist in this country who has understood or who knows the history of agriculture and the neglect that the agricultural sector has suffered in this country in the last half a century, would applaud or support the reopening of the borders. Now, the reason is, for once, government has taken the right step in protecting the local agricultural sector. And every country does that, you know. The United States does it, Japan does it, and all other countries, you know, Indonesia, Malaysia, and all these countries that we used to compare ourselves with. So reopening the borders at this time, for me and for many of us, is a bad omen. Now, when the borders were closed, we are not advocating that the borders remain closed, you know, forever. But farmers needed time, for once, to put their acts together, you know, get on the field with the right policies, you know, supported with the right policies, which the federal government had put in place, ensuring that we eat what we grow and grow that what we can eat and all of that. The support from the central bank, trying to build capacity of farmers, and even what some donor agencies are doing, which, I mean, for example, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. You know, there's been a lot of gains that have gradually, you know, started being recorded, you know, in the agricultural sector. Local production has increased, jobs have been created, you know, and, you know, farmers' income has increased in the rice sector, the maize sector, and a host of other sectors, which we have, you know, the capacity, you know, for in this country. But suddenly opening the borders, you know, would tend to erode all the gains we had in the past. So that's why we are worried about it. Now, a lot of Nigerians, you know, I'm one of them, we had gotten used to eating imported rice, and everything we wanted should be imported. But this is a very wrong mindset. You know, there's some arguments that, well, you know, there's some other sectors in the economy, or even in the agricultural sector, that need to import, you know, inputs like agrochemicals and the stuff and things like that. There's absolutely no input required in agriculture, you know, that we cannot produce in this country. Are we talking about organic input? Are we talking about fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides? We have the resources in this country to produce these things, even up to mechanization. Don't we have a steel rolling mill? There's so much that we could have achieved with the border closure, you know, given the deficit that we had suffered for so long, that should have been sustained. Government should not have bowed to the pressures from the businessmen who have their ships and their cargo, you know, waiting to come to this country.
Now,
the
Mr. Onosanya, let me come in here.
Yeah.
Let's look at, you talked about rice. Let's look at rice, for instance. Now, 5 years after Nigeria launched what seemed at the beginning to be an aggressive push to achieve sufficiency in local production, of which the ban on importation is one of it, and of course the ban still remains even with the border reopening. Now, this widely consumed staple has not only increased in cost, but has become increasingly out of reach for the average consumer. We are in the festive season. A lot of people can't even afford the so-called local rice. Why? So would you now say that we have self-sufficiency when it comes to food?
Now, the reason for that, why the cost of even local rice is still high, is because the cost of production is still high. There's still a lot that the government needs to do to help farmers, to support farmers. A whole lot. Now, we still need more irrigation. Farmers still need it, in this country, less than 1% of the Nigerian food on irrigation. Whereas the global average is 20%. So we still need more irrigation. We need mechanization. We need good roads. Farmers need storage facilities. Now these things are the things that will impact positively on the cost of production. And also, we also need a whole lot more in the area of capacity building, getting farmers to practice best agronomic practices. Now, my organization, we've been working at that, at building capacity of farmers, introducing improved technology, and in a short while, we've been able to move farmers, average production output of rice from things like 0.8, metric tons to as much as 5 metric tons to the hectare. And recently, on one of our fields, demonstration plots, we got 10 tons to the hectare, of Faro 44, which is a water-loving, a lowland growing variety. So these things that do cassava, we've been able to move from 10 metric tons to the hectare, an average of 15 metric tons per hectare in the country, so as much as 48 tons per hectare. So these things are possible, but we need time. That's what we're saying.
Now when you talk about Mr.
Support, if we are consistent with our policy.
Yeah, Mr. Nosaya, you talk about time. How much time do you need? How much time do you think the government would have to give to farmers, to agriculturists?
This protective policy that we're talking about, in terms of the ban on importation of these alternative goods from other countries, and supporting agriculture in an aggressive manner, we would need no less than, we've done like 1 year, okay, for us to get our acts together. I remember, the likes of people, eminent Nigerians in this country. I remember them with nostalgia. The likes of Gamaliel Onosodi, people like Christopher Collade, and a host of other, very brilliant scholars in this country that have told us, look, we need to take the developmental agenda of this country one after the other. If it's power we want to fix, let's face power, let's fix it. When we want to fix agriculture, let's face it, squarely and fix it. And so on and so forth. We move to roads, we move to, storage and so on and so forth. But, doing so much, dissipating energy and resources in different directions at the same time, makes us to lose impact. So it's not too much for us to wait for 5 years to get our agriculture together in this country.
Now, Mr. Nosaya, Mr. Nosaya, I have to come in there because we really don't have much time. Now, if agricultural sector practitioners like you are not in support of the border reopening, how do they want to take advantage of the AFCFTA that is supposed to take off come January 1?
Well, now Nigeria has always played the big brother in Africa. And honestly, we've just been playing that role to our own detriment. We need to put Nigeria first in many things that we're doing.
You're talking about protectionism now. You're talking about protectionism now, which, I mean, has been a problem. Remember? Protectionism. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Nosaya.
Yeah, well, look, it's a positive paradigm. It's a positive thing to do if you're doing it for the right reasons. That's my point. Now, we needed like yesterday to have gotten our agriculture together. Now that oil is telling us, I mean, the oil sector is failing globally. A lot of countries are looking for alternatives. You know, this is one resource, agriculture, that is with us. We have, you know, wonderful resources. We have good soils. We have good climate. We have everything that can make us the food basket of the whole world. We can feed the world. Israel, that is, you know, that is the highest importer of vegetables and stuff, agricultural exporter, I mean, you know, they're doing all of that in a desert. You know, there's so much that I think we just, I get miffed at times. So pardon my emotions here. I get miffed when I hear people saying, oh, for how long? When are we going to do it? And, you know, we need to endure pain for some time in order for us to gain in the future. We need short-term pains for long-term gain, you know? So let's commit to this, and this country will be the better for it. That's my point.
Well, Mr. Nosaya, a couple of other agricultural produce. Yes, I'm still here, if you can hear me. Yes, a couple of other agricultural produce are still under ban. Then now going into 2021, looking at the sector where you operate, what do you see? What is the outlook? A very quick one, please.
Now I looked at the budget. Thankfully, that's been approved, and we are going to be going back into the January to December budget cycle, and that's good. That's a plus. I congratulate the National Assembly and the government for doing this. But I look at agriculture. You know, the allocation to agriculture in this whole budget is just a little over 1%. And I remember the Maputo Declaration in 2003 and the African peer review mechanism, where, you know, African heads of states gathered together in the capital of Mozambique and decided that they would commit not less than 10% of their, you know, of the annual budget, you know, towards developing and supporting agriculture. How do you compare 1% to 10%? And this was done 17 years ago. This decision was taken 17 years ago. So I'm not, you know, I'm not still happy at the allocation to agriculture, you know, in the 2021 budget. We're still scratching the surface. We are not facing the real thing. This is my view. So unfortunately, you know, it's a pity. It's just a pity that, you know, certain things that are so obvious, that should be obvious, let me say, is not obvious to a lot of people, a lot of our leaders there. And I do know that I'm sure there would have been, you know, those in that sector would have, you know, cried out and said all they could, but I mean, what can they do? So I don't see too much of a good future for agriculture if we go by this budget. I know a number of interventions are already ongoing. Let those ones be sustained. Yeah, will help the farmer, but let's not introduce policies. Now, the reopening of the border is not good for health. We're in the second wave of the COVID-19. It's not good for security. You know what's happening? Even rice farmers are being slaughtered. So, and that's going to impact negatively in rice production in the coming year, because these are people who have been trained over the years, you know, to produce. They're all gone. And,
okay, Mr. Nosaya.
We need an aggressive and an angry to agricultural development in this country if we really mean business.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your views. And I'm sure your views, of course, will be taken somehow. And I'm sure eventually, hopefully, we'll get it right all the way. Well, we're in the Christmas mode. And I'm sure I'm not going to see you before Christmas. I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.